gather around for Jeannie's show. It's the Aleut, the Indian and the Eskimo. It's the Aleut, the Indian and the Eskimo.
Hello everyone and welcome to Heartbeat Alaska Native News and Native Information. We here at Heartbeat Alaska love to travel across the north. And today we travel off the beaten path. We travel to an island hundreds of miles off the shore, to the Pribilof Islands, as a matter of fact, to the beautiful island St. George, and visit the beautiful people who live there. St. George is also home to millions of birds and thousands of seals, as a matter of fact. In the summertime, that population swells to around 3,000 fur seals to every person who lives there. It's a beautiful, unique place. Join me now as we travel to St. George. Hundreds of miles from the nearest land, Pribilof found his pot of gold. But in order to cash in, the Russians needed laborers, and lots of them. They found their laborers on the Aleutian Islands. The Russian treatment of the Aleuts blurred the line between slavery and serfdom. In any case, Aleuts were taken from their homes to the uninhabited Pribilof Islands. Less than 100 years later, the Russian government found itself mired in debt. U.S. investors saw they could make a fortune if they could only get their hands on the fur seal trade on these little islands. These investors just happened to meet with William Seward, the U.S. Secretary of State. In 1867, Seward convinced the U.S. Congress to buy Alaska for $7.2 million. For the Aleuts on the islands, the change meant little more than another new language and set of regulations to live by. Over the next 100 years, the treatment of the Aleuts and the seals they harvested slowly improved. Today, the old sealing plant sits empty, staring out at the relentless sea. Young seals play in the dock where boatloads of furs used to be shipped out. All that is left are ghosts and memories.
I started working the seedling plant down there when I was 17 years old.
Andronik Kashevarof remembers the hard work.
When we did the first field harvest here, I worked as a pot cutter on the hauling grounds out there. Then there I moved down to the processing plant down there where I did from taking all the skins back from the seedling plant all the way, from the killing fields all the way back down to the processing plant where we processed them down there and did them out for the shipping down there.
Along with the hard work, though, came the security of knowing where your next paycheck would come from. That is, until that day when it all ended.
Well, the government just didn't tell us anything. I think they should have given us a little bit of a warning, but I don't think we got that. It was just like overnight.
In 1973, the U.S. government abruptly shut down the first seal harvest on the St. George Island. After generations of government parenting, the descendants of those original slaves were set adrift to find their own way.
I think the government in the early years were trying to move us all off the island here. Every time a family left here, they would tear down the house there, but all of a sudden that stopped because a lot of people refused to move from here.
The empty lots where houses used to be can still be seen. Things began to go in a different direction when the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act set up native corporations across the state.
When the land claims came here and it started on through the state, that I think that helped us a lot, so we couldn't move after that. I think that's one of the big things that really helped there. I'm sure glad that came around. Otherwise, I think we'd probably been a ghost town or something like that.
The federal government quickly began to see they were obligated to do something for the islanders.
The government gave us $10 million to start up a different economy.
The government also gave the islanders many of the buildings on the island, buildings that had been decaying for decades.
It took a lot of money to fix the infrastructure, to bring it up to code and everything else like that. So $10 million didn't go a long ways, and so we went back to Congress and got more money for that, to do more infrastructure and stuff out there. Then we started on the fisheries, started building the harbors.
Andronik is Vice President of Operations for St. George Tanakh Corporation. Tanakh, a native corporation formed under the Alaska Native Land Claims Settlement Act of 1971, continues to do great things for the island. By securing government contracts for restoration and construction projects, they provide jobs for islanders. But as Andronik is keenly aware, there are only so many projects on the island. The government can't supply the island's payroll forever.
The guys would have to leave the island, or if they can make it possible, take their family out. But it'll come to that sooner or later. If there's nothing else in the island, and it might get a little bit more quieter in here.
But the truth of the matter is,
well, there's no economy here. I mean, other than halibut fishery and a little bit of tourism.
Malavansky is 22 years old. Even though he grew up here, he only lives on St. George in the summertime.
The economy right now is kind of slim. Around here, you have a lot of people moving off island and stuff, and coming back to fish, during the summers, and moving back out and going to school or doing whatever.
Max wants to return to St. George after school, but realizes that he'll probably have to stay off island in order to make a living.
A lot of the high school kids nowadays, after they graduate, they move off island because there's nothing here for them. It's sad to say.
Peter Lekenof is trying to make a living working on his brother Dennis's halibut boat.
Well, we set gear last night, and about 7 o'clock, when he picked it up, took off harbor about 8 o'clock last night.
Today, Dennis and his crew are long-lining for halibut. Though they can make decent money on a good day, the fishing economy here has ridden up and down in waves, taking the islanders with it.
Watch yourself, Rodney.
The fresh Alaskan crab we might see on a menu usually comes from the Bering Sea. And that fresh Alaskan crab funds city governments on the Pribilofs. But after a few boom years of big harvest and big money, The crab stocks crashed and haven't recovered. So the boys are here looking for halibut.
Basically, go out there, drop your line overnight, pick it up the next day. Whatever halibut you catch, you gut. It's sold to the Puffin Seafoods here, and then delivered to Trident in St. Paul. So the guys get their checks about a week later for what they catch.
Past couple of years, you know, it's hard catching fish around here.
There's been finger pointing about why fish stocks are declining around the Pribilofs. No one can say for sure what's happening, but Peter is concerned about the future.
I don't know about the restrictions, but during the spring we watched these 300-foot draggers coming through here, one after another, just practically side by side.
By draggers, Peter is referring to big trawling ships that drag huge nets. The nets are sometimes dragged or raked right across the bottom. Peter agrees with many experts who say raking may damage certain habitats.
And we don't know, if they're mid-trawling or bottom trawling.
Not knowing is a large part of the issue. The declines could be caused by anything from climate change to habitat change to overfishing. But whatever the cause, the problem hits home.
I've got 2 daughters and a son, you gotta start thinking about them.
There is a no-trawl zone around the Pribilof Islands. The idea is to protect local fisheries for islanders. Anthony Merculief is a fisherman.
I think the boundaries of the of the area that encompasses the Pribilof Islands needs to be extended southward. I think the lines are drawn to accommodate be more accommodating to the trawlers than to us.
The North Pacific Fishery Management Council regulates fishing here. But as an island of only 160 people, the voices of the big fishing corporations easily drown them out.
We've been going to the meetings, been going to North Pacific Management Council and bringing our grievances and everything else like that, but sometimes I think we just go there for nothing. I don't think we get anything done out there, but it's all political, I guess.
Whatever the reason for the declining fish stocks in the Bering Sea, it's affecting more than just the people on the island.
And I've noticed that now the fur seals, the females have to go further and further out to get what they need to eat. And by the time they get back here, well, their pups are gone, they're dead.
One of the big fears in the Pribilofs is that fur seals, now listed as depleted, may become endangered. If that happens, all fishing may be shut down. The decline of St. George's wildlife could have profound effects on the island's other hope for an economy, tourism. There is no question there's plenty of wildlife for folks to say hello to.
It's an incredible place. There are species that exist here in incredible numbers that don't exist in these numbers anywhere else in the world. For example, northern fur seals, 80% of the world's population come here each summer to breed. Red-legged kittiwakes. It's one of the only places you'll find them is in the Bering Sea, and the best place to see them is in the Pribilof Islands.
There's no other place like it on Earth. Right. There's just no other place like it on Earth. There's no place that people can go and see some of these birds in the numbers and the abundance that we've just seen today.
Debbie Harrison and Olga Romanenko are hiking to St. George's famous high bluffs. The bluffs tower 1,000 feet above the sea and have some of the greatest concentrations of seabirds in the world.
There's clearly a tremendous opportunity. More and more people are getting into, are attracted to ecotourism experiences. We're seeing rapid increases in numbers of people who recognize themselves as birders, and I think that the communities of St. Paul and St. George will need to make a decision as to how and how much they want to promote ecotourism in this area without losing those tremendous characteristics that make it so unique.
But even with a beautifully restored hotel and new runway, St. George can still be almost as hard to find as it was back in 1786. When the fog rolls in and the planes can't find the runway, they don't land. This makes travel expensive and hard to schedule. The problems with the economy on St. George are very real. The very existence of the village could depend on decisions made by the islanders in the near future. This spring, St. George had some visitors from a long way away.
We've got some great people here. When you talk about a working group, I see the working group here. I talked to some of the fishermen. Some of the deals we've made in other parts of the world and country are already happening here. I see the people at the table.
Tony Irochi is a commercial fisherman in the Florida Keys. He's visiting the island with a group from the Nature Conservancy of Alaska and the World Wildlife Fund. Tony worked to set up marine protected areas in the waters around the Florida Keys. The group held a town meeting to help show how conservation and fishing can go hand in hand.
It seems like a paradox. You close an area to fishing. How is that possibly going to benefit fishermen? But actually, it's really simple, and it's been shown in more than 100 studies worldwide that if you close an area to destructive fishing practices, the fish that live in that area are able to survive longer, grow much bigger, and most importantly, they reproduce much more successfully. So you've set aside a fairly small area usually, but the resident population in that reserve area is able to help replenish the surrounding fishing grounds.
I like what they're thinking, because for me, and not only for me, but for these younger ones, that's how it's going to benefit them. I mean, before it's too late, something has to be done now.
One of the other things that could shore up St. George's economy is reopening the fish processing plant on the island.
Yummy.
With a processor, the fish would be worth more when they left the island, so the islanders could keep more of the profit.
But I think some of the companies that are kind of worried about putting anything here on the island is if the fish is there. If the fish is there and the market is there, I think you could put a processing plant here. But if there's nothing really out in the ocean to process, why should you put it here? And that's coming from them directly.
If the people of St. George agree to set aside certain parts of this vast ocean so fish can have a safe place to breed and grow, there will be even more work ahead. The islanders and outside commercial fishing interests will need to come together to find a shared vision and take a common plan to the North Pacific Fisheries Council. But there is hope in the foggy air of this island. There is hope that through hard work and by taking risks, the people of St. George will not have to leave this place they love. Georgie Kashevarof explains.
Working with all entities and trying to come up with a economic development plan to see what we can do for this community.
Whoever said that a bad day of fishing is better than a good day at work stands true.
Yeah. We're just a beautiful small community and everybody's close with each other, and we'd like to see change and growth in our community, and hopefully we can get our economic state up there.
We're working on that, hopefully get something going with all the entities on the island working together on that.
An ancient Aleut hunter found these islands after many days at sea in his ikak or kayak. After he returned home, the legend of the first seal islands he called Amek was passed down for generations. It was only by the greed of outsiders that the Aleuts came to live on this sleeping volcano. The people here today represent the 7th generation of islanders, descended from the Aleuts the Russians forced to come here. Their names are constant reminders of the past. Lekenof, Lekenof, Malavansky, Kashevarof. Their history is all around them. But these are no longer displaced people. they are home. Since our visit to St. George, representatives from commercial fishing interests, from the islands itself, and from Nature Conservancy have held meetings. They're working together and coming together to find ways to protect the unique way of life in the Pribilof Islands. Thank you so much, Nature Conservancy and St. George Tannock Corporation, for making this story possible. And thank you for joining us. Join us again next week, won't you, for more Heartbeat Alaska. I'm Jeannie Green. Have wonderful holidays. I'll be back next week.
And right now the males are coming in to set up their territories. They're harem breeders, so like what they call the beach masters, the big guys will get the best spots close down to the water, and they'll have harems of, you know, up to 60 females.
Woo,
and then as you, well, I don't know, they fight pretty hard for their territory. It's pretty, this time of year it can be pretty messy apparently.
The battle?
Yeah, just sort of, you know, by midsummer they've mellowed out some. They kind of have learned where everybody's territory is, so they're not, there's a lot of display but not that much actual fighting. But they hang out, the males will hang out all summer long here and lose something like 40 or 50% of their body weight.
It's Heartbeat, Alaska. It's Heartbeat, Alaska.
To purchase a copy of this program, ask for Heartbeat Alaska. Heartbeat number 1122. That's Heartbeat number 1122. And send your check or money order to Jeannie Green Productions, 6216 Old Seward Highway, Anchorage, Alaska, 99518. Or give us a call, 907-563-7440.